with our next guest, who is an epidemiologist specializing in global health from the University of Ottawa. Raywat Deonandan joins us now. Raywat, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Why don't we just talk about how Canada's doing overall, first of all, in terms of this vaccination campaign. It looks like we're behind some countries, we're ahead of other countries, but in terms of G7 nations, we're not faring all that well, and it looks like we're really going to be facing some delays heading into next week and into February.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing, and it's hard to decide who to put the blame on because someone's got to be blamed. There are certain bottlenecks. There's manufacturing bottlenecks. There's distribution bottlenecks. There's usage bottlenecks. And there may have been some negotiation issues as well. But the bottom line is we don't have enough vaccines, and the ones we do have need to be used strategically. It's unclear if they're being used in that way.
So, Raywat, there's a lot of conversation about why the delay. I know that we haven't received a ton of transparency from the government in terms of what it is. We've heard that there's a production delay. Potentially it's because there's a lab in Belgium that might be stopping production to then ramp up production to make more. What do we know about the delay? What is there in terms of how this thing actually comes together that we need to know to understand why it can't just be something that comes to us overnight?
Right. So there are many aspects in vaccine manufacturing, especially these new mRNA vaccines that require certain reagents that are at a premium globally. And it's a new technology, too. So there's new techniques. Not just any factory can make them. They have to be specially equipped. Plus, there's a quality assurance process. So let's say we take an existing factory that makes, beer or something like that. We have an abundance here in Canada, and we want to retest that to make these mRNA vaccines. We could do it. It will take some time to re-equip them. But then there's a quality assurance. For example, the Big Mac that you have in Edmonton is not the same one that you have in Paris, for example. It tastes a little bit different, and that little bit difference in a vaccine can make all the difference. So we have to make sure that everything is exactly the same. That's the first thing. Then there's, as you mentioned, some of these factories are going offline to be rejigged to be able to produce more output. That's what they're claiming right now. And of course, there's the global demand for these products, and all of these countries have sharp elbows that are helping each other out. So there's an element of who's got the best negotiation tactic. For example, Israel has managed to secure more Pfizer doses in exchange for data because they've got about over 20% of the population vaccinated. They're able to exchange the medical data from that population to the company for more doses. So there are all kinds of negotiation levers, I think, that can be tried still.
Yeah, are we doing enough? I mean, of course, we saw the Premier of Ontario saying, he'd be over there following this guy as soon as he leaves his house and saying, where's our doses, where's our doses? Is Canada ramping up the pressure? Because like you say, the European Union is not seeing their doses from the same factory being interrupted. Israel's doing very well. So other countries are making out better than Canada.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm not sure exactly what the problem is. Some of my colleagues would point to a failure of negotiation earlier in the year, having put too many eggs in the wrong basket, as it were. We have other doses as well out there. We've only okayed 2 of them so far, the Pfizer and Moderna, but there's the AstraZeneca formulation that might be okayed soon. There's a Janssen formulation. In Asia, the Indians and the Chinese have their own doses that are being shipped out to all kinds of countries. So India is sharing their doses en masse with Myanmar and Nepal and Seychelles and other kinds of countries. So globally, there are a lot of options we have not yet explored. I'm not saying we should do that because those formulations may not be optimal for us. But every country seems to have its own issues right now, and ours seems to be possibly at the negotiation level, definitely at the supply level.
And it's affecting now, as we mentioned, who's getting the second dose and when. How far can we push that second dose for it still to be effective?
That is a really big question. Now, we don't really know. We know for sure from clinical trials that for one formulation, 21 days, for the other, 28 days. That's the only data we have for sure. There are some whisperings that there's some data that is unpublished that suggests that maybe a few days after that it's fine. And the Israelis now are suggesting that their delay data may be suggesting that it's not a wise idea to delay too much longer. Frankly, if you had asked me this question, a month ago, I would have said, do not delay under any circumstances. All we know that 21, 28 days, that's what works. However, we're in a new dynamic now where the new variants are posing a existential threat, really, to our healthcare systems, and we have to make sure that we get as many doses into as many arms, the right arms as possible. If that means having to delay, then so be it, because we have to harden our vulnerable population against this new variant.
I guess the question is, if we go and say, we've got 750,000 people vaccinated, let's say 300,000 have got the first shot only and are waiting for their second shot, is there a potential it could be wasted if we don't get it to them within that 21 or 28 days?
It is a potential. We just don't know. So the immunity might wane after a few weeks. It might last for a few months or even years. We simply do not know. The other small threat, which really has been fully explored, is if you have suboptimal immunity, you may be creating an environment for more vaccine-resistant strains to emerge. As they get exposed to a small number of antibodies that don't outright kill them, they may select for the ones that are more resistant. That hasn't really been talked about or explored in the laboratories as much as they will be soon. I don't expect it's going to be a big thing, but it's certainly something to consider. So it's not ideal to delay it. And it's something that we should only consider if the situation is truly dire. And it might be that dire right now.
Is there anything then, Riwat, to be optimistic about?
Yeah, we're going to have a glut of vaccines in the middle of this year. Okay. All the manufacturing is ramping up. Joe Biden has signed the Defense Production Act, which means that the Americans will be producing a hell of a lot of vaccine, which means we're going to benefit from that because we're able to buy the ones they can't use. So we're going to have a lot of vaccine very soon, in addition to many different formulations, the AstraZeneca, the Janssen, and so forth. It's just going to take a couple of months longer than we thought.
All right.
Which frustrates some of us to know it.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Okay, Riwat, thank you so much for explaining that. We really appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, that's Riwat Deonandan. He's an epidemiologist specializing